Thumbnails are one of the most important factors in getting people to click on your videos, to even watch them in the first place. If your video is not getting a lot of views, it probably doesn't have a very good thumbnail. So in this video, I'm going to show you a quick and easy way to create an effective thumbnail for your YouTube videos using Photoshop or your image editing application of choice. That's coming up next. Thanks for joining me today. I'm digital artist Aaron Rutten. Let's go ahead and dive into Photoshop and I'll show you how I create my thumbnails for my videos on YouTube. The quickest and easiest way to create a thumbnail is to create a template ahead of time. I have a template here in Photoshop that is 1280 by 720, and as you can see, it has some different layers that I created ahead of time for text and my branding. And there's a filter applied to the branding where I can change the hue or the color of it. There's also a solid background. So all I need to do to create a thumbnail is just drag in my image or my background, go ahead and click on the check to commit, and then I'll go ahead and just hide some of these other layers for now until I need them later. I'll go ahead and zoom in so I can see more of my image here. There's a good chance that you're going to need to isolate something like a person or an object. So to do that, I'm going to use the polygonal lasso tool. You could also use the Bezier pen or any of the selection tools such as the magnetic lasso, or you could try the new select subject feature, which is found in the select menu. That also works really well to automatically select a subject. But since I have my hair color that's pretty close to my background color here and the chair and things like that, it's just easier for me and quicker just to go ahead and use the lasso tool. So I'm just clicking to make little points along the edge just to basically cut out myself here out of this background. I'll go ahead and add a mask to that layer. And what that's going to do is that's going to mask or temporarily conceal that background. We'll have an opportunity to refine this edge later. Right now I want to go ahead and just drag in another image, and this will be the background image. This could be a design or a pattern, or it could be just a different background that looks cleaner and less distracting. When I move that layer beneath myself or that image that I isolated, now it makes it easier to see that edge. I'll go ahead and just free transform that background if I need to scale it larger or make it fit a little bit better. Then I'm going to go to Filter, Gaussian Blur, and this is kind of optional, but this may help set your foreground subject apart from your background by blurring the background just a little bit. I'm going to click back on my isolated subject on the mask, and I'm going to choose Select and Mask. And I'm going to go ahead and just smooth out the edge a little bit and shift the edge inward. I'll go ahead and click on OK. You can experiment with the Select and Mask settings to get different effects. Now I'm going to go ahead and select the brush tool, just select the regular hard edge brush. I'm going to select black for my color, and I can use that to paint within that mask to conceal some more of those pixels or some more of that background. And I can hit X to switch to white, and then I can paint with white to bring some of those pixels back. So for instance, in the hair, I may want to clean that up a bit so it looks a little more natural and my hair is not just all flat. Now the edge doesn't have to be absolutely perfect because what we're going to do next is we're going to put a stroke along the edge, and that's going to conceal it a bit. So let's go ahead and do that. On the layer for my isolated subject, I'm going to click the Layer Effect button, and I'm going to choose Stroke. And then I can choose the kind of stroke that I want. If I want it to be outside of the object, inside of the object, or centered, you may get a better result depending on which one you choose. I'm going to go ahead and go with outside since that looks better. You can also change the color. I find that white works pretty well. And then you can change the size if you want it to be thicker or thinner. Probably don't want it to be too thin or too thick. And then if you want, you can add a drop shadow by clicking on the drop shadow button. And then you can increase or decrease the distance of the drop shadow and increase and decrease the size to make it softer or sharper. But something like that is subtle and it helps the foreground stand out from the background a little bit more. If I zoom out a bit, I can better judge the results that I'm getting. Now I'm going to go ahead and just arrange my isolated subject here. I'll just move myself over a little bit to the right because I don't need to show so much of my shoulder. And this will leave me some room to place my text over on the left. You want to try to fill as much space as you can, but you do want to leave a little bit of breathing room so it's not too crowded. So I'm going to bring back the visibility of my text layers here and then just move them over to the left to fill that space. I'll go ahead and just hide one, and we'll start with this one here. First thing I need to do is change the color so we can see it, so I'll change the color to black. And then I'll go ahead and change the text to something that's more appropriate. This video is going to be about Patreon rewards, so I'll go ahead and put in rewards here and just transform it a bit with free transform. And before I get too far with the text, I also know I want to bring in the Patreon logo, so I'll drag that in. I need to make sure that I move the logo and the text layers down beneath my isolated subject. Then I'll go ahead and go back to the Patreon logo and I'll free transform it to make it smaller, maybe about this big. Click on the check to commit and arrange it about where I want it. I'll go back to that text layer and I'll move that down beneath the logo. And I can see that that needs to be smaller overall. Now I want 2 lines of text, so I'm going to go ahead and just hold Alt and Shift and drag down a clone. And I'll just go ahead and just move that cloned layer up above my isolated subject, so I have kind of like an overlapping in the foreground effect and then part of the text going behind the subject, which just helps give it some 3-dimensionality and helps it stand out a little bit more. But it's completely optional if you want to do something like this. It's probably better that you don't have text covering anything that's important. And of course, you don't want any important text to be covered by your subjects. You have to arrange things depending on what kind of thumbnail you're making, and it really just comes down to trying something, seeing if it works, and if you don't like it, try something else. Now at this point, everything's kind of more or less where I want it, but I want to separate some things using layer effects. So on that Patreon logo, I'm going to try giving it an outer glow. I'll change the color to white, and I'll make it a little less harsh, just so it has a subtle glow along the edges. That helps set it apart from the background. That way it doesn't look like it's part of the background image. I'll go to that layer of text that says Patreon and I'll add a white stroke to that to help that stand out against the background. That white stroke matches the white stroke around my subject. I'll do the same thing on rewards. I'll go ahead and just add a white stroke to that. And we can see now the text stands out from the background much more easily. I'm also going to add a color overlay, and that will allow me to easily try out different colors. I'll sample one of those colors from the Patreon logo, and that looks pretty good, I think. When you're choosing colors, make sure to choose complementary colors. You could choose colors from within your image. That's always a safe bet. Or you can look up a digital art color wheel, or you can learn a little bit about color theory. There's also a website called Adobe Color, or if you want, you can download my color guide PDF for digital artists. I'll put a link down in the video description. Now I'll go ahead and zoom out just to look at this a lot smaller, and that'll help me get an idea of how it's really going to look when it's on YouTube. Now you may find that when you zoom out and you look at it, you may need to do a little bit more work to help things stand out. So I'm going to go to that background layer, and I'll add an adjustment layer for solid color. And then I will choose one of those colors, the coral color from the logo. And if you change the blend mode, then it's going to blend with your background, and that may help your background stand out a little bit more from the foreground. You'll have to try it and see. You can also reduce the opacity of that layer, and that'll help blend it with the background, and then you'll get kind of the best of both worlds. I think just a subtle tinting helps set it apart from the foreground. Now I'm going to change the color of my branding. I'm going to double click on that hue saturation smart filter that I added to the layer, and I can adjust the hue and the saturation until that branding matches the background as well. I just want to try to choose a color that's complementary. So I went with kind of a navy color that's lighter and more desaturated. Now I want to zoom out quite a bit because sometimes this thumbnail can be really small on YouTube, and I may need to make some changes just to experiment and see what works best. If it looks more visible, you're on the right track. If it looks less visible, then you probably don't want to do that. So feel free to experiment. Don't expect that you're going to get it perfect the first time. It's not uncommon for me to upload a thumbnail, see that I don't like it, and then fix it and upload another. I'm going to go ahead and change that background tinting to a more navy blue, and I feel like that helps everything else stand out a little bit more, and it just looks better overall. You also want to consider that at a very small size, the thumbnail will have a little time code that's in the bottom right, so avoid putting anything important in the bottom right of the thumbnail. So let's go ahead and save our thumbnail now. I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to save my master copy with all my layers as Patreon rewards. That'll be a Photoshop PSD. Then I'm going to go to File, Export, Quick Export as PNG, and this will be the copy that we'll actually publish to YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and upload the video. I usually create the thumbnail while the video is uploading or right after it's uploaded. I'll go ahead and just choose that thumbnail that I created, and we can see how it looks. So far I think it looks okay, but we'll want to take a look at it in a few other scenarios to make sure that it's as good as possible. For example, we want to look at it in the video manager because then you'll be able to see a very small thumbnail, which you might see if you're browsing YouTube on a mobile phone. Keep in mind that that time code is in the bottom right, so hopefully that's not covering up anything important. We can also go to edit the video, and then we can see the thumbnail a little bit bigger and see how it might look on YouTube with some text across the top. You'll also want to do a search that might bring up your video just to see how it looks compared to the other thumbnails surrounding it. The goal is to make your thumbnail look better than the other thumbnails surrounding it. So what would you click on if you had to choose from this set of thumbnails here? You can go back and you can change your thumbnail as much as you need to. There's nothing wrong with changing it. You want to have the best thumbnail possible, and sometimes it takes looking at it once it's uploaded to determine that it needs some fixing. So if the text isn't readable and it's too small, or everything's too cluttered, or the colors don't stand out enough, or there's just not enough context in the thumbnail to accurately describe what the video is about, go back and change it and make it better. Now you might also notice that there's some branding on a few of these thumbnails, and that branding is a little vertical strip over on the left. There's branding on 2 of my videos, and there's branding on one of Video Creator's videos. And what that branding does is that branding helps catch the eye of the viewer and helps them know that there's multiple videos by the same creator in that search or in suggested videos. So basically what that means is if people are looking through this list, their eye will be drawn to that branding and they'll be able to see that there's 2 of my videos in this search. And chances are, if they're a fan of my channel, then they might click on more of my videos. So that branding can be a helpful thing to have on your thumbnails. So there you go, that's how you can create a quick and effective YouTube thumbnail using Photoshop. If you found this information helpful, take a quick second to like this video. And if you're new to my channel, I'd love to have you subscribe. I release new videos every week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.